At Thanksgiving, my sister found out I had $12 million, and my family demanded. Have you ever felt completely invisible to your own family, like your existence was just inconvenient? Well, I built a multi-million-dollar empire in secret, only for my family to unleash pure outrage when they finally discovered it, demanding their share. You won't believe what happened next. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah, I'm 38, and this is a story I just have to get off my chest. You know those family dynamics where one child can do no wrong, while the other just disappears? Yeah, welcome to my life. Everything was pretty normal until I was about 8 years old. I was an only child, and while my parents weren't exactly showering me with affection, they were there. Mom would help with homework. Dad would take me fishing on Lake St. Clair sometimes. We weren't the Brady Bunch, but we were fine. Then came the night that shattered everything. I remember my Aunt Kelly showing up at 2 a.m., telling me to pack a suitcase. Mom was in the hospital. My baby sister, Rachel, was on her way, but something was wrong. She wasn't due for another 2 months. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits and hushed, worried conversations. Rachel was tiny like one of my dolls, but covered in tubes and wires. I wasn't allowed to touch her or even get too close. That was the first time I felt it, an invisible wall starting to form between me and my family. When they finally brought Rachel home, our house transformed into a sterilized bubble. My mom became obsessed with germs. I'm talking industrial strength, disinfectant everywhere, hand sanitizer stations in every room, constant cleaning. To this day, the harsh smell of bleach makes my stomach churn. But here's the part that truly twisted me. If I showed even the slightest symptom of illness, I was whisked away. Every single time. Sneeze once? Pack your bags for Grandma Marie's. A mild cough? Off to Aunt Kelly's pronto. At first, it felt like an adventure. Grandma Marie made the best cookies, and Aunt Kelly had an incredible collection of Nancy Drew books I was devouring. But kids aren't stupid. After a while, you start to connect the dots. You realize you're not going on an exciting trip. You're being treated like a biohazard. Like your mere existence could endanger your precious little sister. I tried everything to get their attention in a normal way, I really did. I brought home straight A's, but Mom would barely look up from Rachel's latest doctor's appointment calendar. I won first prize at the science fair, building a renewable energy project. Dad's only comment? Can you store that display board in the garage? Rachel's allergic to cardboard dust. Is that even a thing? The real gut punch came when I was 12. For months, I'd been practicing for the school talent show, teaching myself bridge over troubled water on the piano. I know, a bit cliché, but I loved it. The night of the show, Rachel had a 99.1-degree fever. Guess who had an empty seat in the audience? Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire family, both sets of grandparents included, showed up for Rachel's 15-minute flute recital, where she essentially murdered hot cross buns. Rachel quickly learned how to work the system. By the age of 7, she was largely past her real health issues, but that didn't stop her. A headache. Must stay home from school. Feeling tired. Someone else should do her chores. Worried about a test. Mom would literally call the school to extend the deadline. I started retreating into my room more and more, immersing myself in books about art history and antiques. It's funny how life works out sometimes. My room became my sanctuary, mainly because Rachel claimed she was allergic to my lavender air freshener, so it was the one place she wouldn't go. Do you know what's truly messed up? When she faked being sick, a part of me felt grateful. At least then, I'd be shipped off to Grandma Marie's, where someone would actually ask about my day or be genuinely interested in what I was up to. Grandma was the one who ignited my passion for vintage jewelry. She had this incredible collection of costume pieces, and she'd let me organize and catalog them. I guess I should have seen that as prophetic. The worst part wasn't even the blatant favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to justify their actions. Rachel just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Sarah's always been so independent. Sarah understands that her sister has special needs. No, I didn't understand. I was a child who couldn't grasp why having a healthy immune system made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I can see how those years shaped me. That constant message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient doesn't just vanish. But hey, at least it taught me to be fiercely self-sufficient. When no one checks your homework or cares about your triumphs, you quickly learn to be your own loudest cheerleader. High school. Most people either loved or loathed it. Me, I saw it as my golden ticket out. While Rachel was busy building her drama empire in middle school, I was quietly laying the groundwork for my own escape. And let me tell you, nothing motivates you more than knowing that if you don't do it, no one will. Remember those hours sorting Grandma Marie's jewelry? That taught me the absolute necessity of systematic organization and meticulous attention to detail. In high school, I applied that same ruthless efficiency to everything. My desk at home looked like something out of an organization magazine. Color-coded notes, meticulously planned study schedules, everything in its place. Rachel, of course, teased me about it, calling me Raymond. Very original, sis. But here's the thing about being invisible. No one's watching your failures or your successes. So, you just do whatever the heck you want. I joined every club that wouldn't interfere with my part-time job at Carson's Diner. Shout out to Carol, the owner, who always remembered my birthday when my own parents forgot. Debate team? Check. National Honor Society president? Check. Editor-in-chief of the school newspaper? Check. The debate team, though, that's where I truly found my voice. There's something incredibly satisfying about dismantling someone's argument while maintaining total composure. It also taught me how to negotiate, a skill I didn't realize at the time would become invaluable. I even won states twice. My parents couldn't make it to either competition. Rachel had major soccer games, even though she was on the C team and barely played. Junior year, things got truly interesting. I took the SATs and scored a flawless 1600. Not pretty good, but perfect. You know how many people get that? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the results screen for almost 20 minutes, convinced it was a mistake. I rushed home, bursting to tell my parents. I know, stupid, right? Mom was in the kitchen, helping Rachel with her English homework. Mom, look. I practically shouted. I got a perfect SAT score. She barely glanced up. That's nice, honey, but can you keep it down? Rachel's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. Rachel piped up. Yeah, some of us actually have to study Miss Perfect. My mom immediately cooed. Rachel, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner. I still have the hard copy of those SAT results somewhere. Never got pinned on the fridge. But Rachel's C+ in English? That baby received prime refrigerator real estate, complete with a "we're so proud of you" magnet. The college application process was an experience. I applied to 15 schools without telling a soul. I wrote all my own essays, gathered my own recommendations, and handled every single piece of financial aid paperwork myself. My guidance counselor, Mr. Chen, was the true MVP. My parents were too busy to help with the FAFSA, so I stayed late after school every night. Then the acceptances started rolling in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan. Each one came with a scholarship offer. I kept them all in a locked box under my bed. I knew exactly what would happen if Rachel found them. They'd suddenly shift their focus entirely to her. But if Sarah goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone, or some nonsense like that. The day I received my full ride offer from Yale, Rachel joined JV cheerleading. Guess which one was celebrated with a family feast? Hint. I had microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But you know what? That scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, room, board, book allowance, all covered. I could finally escape that house where I was either invisible or inconvenient. The day I got that acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a fourth-floor window seat overlooking the park, and I cried for an hour. Not sad tears. These were tears of pure, unadulterated relief. When I told my parents at dinner that I was going to U of M, they were ecstatic. Michigan? But that's so far. What if Rachel needs you? My mom exclaimed. I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses, Dad added. Rachel's cheerleading competitions are very costly. Rachel, of course, burst into tears, dramatically wailing. Oh my God, finally! Can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos. That summer before college, I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner, saving every penny. Carol, bless her heart, always slipped me extra tips and made sure I took home leftover pie. She also taught me a vital skill, how to spot genuine people in a world full of fakes. Honey, she'd tell me, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say. Move-in day at U of Michigan. My folks couldn't make it, of course. Surprise! Rachel had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Kelly drove me instead, helped me set up my dorm room, and handed me an envelope with $500. Your Grandma Marie wanted you to have this, she said. She's so proud of you. I later learned Grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security checks for months. That first night in my dorm room, I made myself a promise. I was going to create such a wonderful life that being overlooked would be utterly inconceivable. Not for vengeance, not to prove anything to my family, but for that 8-year-old girl who was sent to Grandma's house for sneezing. College flew by in a blur of all-nighters, instant ramen, and glorious independence. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan. Not that my folks noticed, of course. They were too busy helping Rachel transfer to her third college in 2 years. But this is where the plot truly takes an unexpected turn. I landed an entry-level job at Everett and Phillips, a high-end auction house in Detroit. Not the real name, but if you're in the business, you know who I'm talking about. Think old money, serious clients. I started in their estate sales division, documenting the belongings of wealthy individuals after their deaths. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. My first few months were pretty standard. Endless china sets, categorizing vintage furniture, the usual. Then came the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston, an elderly widow, had passed away with no children, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a colossal collection of costume jewelry. Rooms full of it. This is where those hours at Grandma Marie's suddenly became incredibly useful. I was sifting through this mountain of pieces when something snagged my attention. An Art Deco brooch. Nothing flashy, but something about it felt different. The weight was wrong for costume jewelry. The clasp mechanism was far too intricate for a replica. I think I spent my entire lunch break that day researching old jewelry markers and signatures. I ended up staying late, using the company's membership to several antique jewelry databases. The more I looked, the more certain I became. This wasn't costume. It was the real deal. Problem was, I was the new kid. Nobody would believe me if I claimed we had a potential treasure on our hands. So I did what the debate team taught me. I meticulously prepared my argument. For 2 weeks, during lunch breaks and evenings, I devoured everything I could find about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even spent some of my pitiful savings on an online gemology course. Finally, I mustered the courage to approach my boss, Mr. Harrison. I brought the entire presentation, comparative images, historical documentation, the works. Sir, I said, I think we might have something significant in the Kingston collection. Harrison, barely looking up from his phone, mumbled, Sarah, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces. You're mistaken. I know, but look at these maker marks, I insisted, pushing the images across his desk. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures. Harrison finally looked up, really looked at me. Where did you learn all this? My reply was simple. I did some research. Long story short, that costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. Turns out, it was part of a limited collection created for European royalty in the 1920s. But here's the real kicker. Harrison started to trust me. He began giving me other artifacts to authenticate. Suddenly, my pointless pastime of sorting antique jewels had real significance. I devoted myself to learning everything. I took every online course I could afford, spent weekends at estate sales, built a small library of authentication procedures. My apartment looked like a jewelry scholar's fever dream, with walls covered in printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification guidelines. The auction house started seeing results. I was unearthing important items others had overlooked, building contacts with collectors, mastering the market. My commission checks grew bigger and bigger. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was saving. And my family? Still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still went to, like a fool, the conversation would go like this. Sarah's still at that antique shop, right? Mom would say to Aunt Kelly. It was an auction house, and yes, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece that morning. Rachel would interrupt. Oh my God, speaking of jewelry, you guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall. But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I had discovered something wholly mine. Something I was genuinely excellent at. Something completely unrelated to being Rachel's sister. Then came the Rothschild collection. This was about 2 years into my employment. A massive estate, old money, a lot of industry, buzz. I was part of the team cataloging their jewelry. And that's when I spotted it, a fairly unassuming Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had simply missed. I spent 3 days researching it. Barely slept. It turned out to be from a famous French jeweler's private collection, believed lost during World War II. When it sold at auction for $238,000, Harrison called me to his office. I thought I was getting a promotion. Instead, he said something that completely reframed everything. Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. Initially, I laughed it off. Me? Start a business? With what money? But the idea, the seed had been planted. I started doing small freelance authentication projects on the side. Word spread I had a knack. Private collectors began contacting me directly. One night, I was sitting in my modest apartment, surrounded by jewelry manuals and authentication tools I'd slowly acquired, when I had an epiphany. This is something I could actually do. I could build something entirely on my own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a large loan against my car. I emptied my meager savings account. I rented a tiny office space in a less than desirable area of town. People thought I was insane. Maybe I was. I transformed a storage room above a Chinese restaurant, about the size of a college dorm. The rent was low because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only worked if you sat by the window. But it was mine. The first few months were interesting. And by interesting, I mean utterly terrifying. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. in cold sweats, calculating how many months until my savings ran out. Loan payments felt like a rope tightening around my neck. My office furniture consisted of a card table from Goodwill and a chair I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, I cleaned it thoroughly. But in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and contacts are everything, and my experience at the auction house had given me both. I started small, doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My fees were lower than the big firms, but my attention to detail quickly became legendary. 6 months later, a watershed moment. A dealer I'd worked with at the auction house asked me to look at a collection of Victorian brooches. The owner needed confirmation before selling. It turned out to be a massive collection, spanning 3 generations. I worked on it for 2 straight weeks, barely sleeping, documenting everything. I unearthed 2 extremely rare pieces that had been dismissed as later replicas. The owner was so thrilled with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fee, but offered me a 10% commission when the pieces sold. That commission? $86,000. More money than I'd earned in the previous 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone was ringing off the hook. Private collectors who'd heard about my knack for finding missed pieces. Estate lawyers seeking advice on inherited jewelry. Even my old auction house started sending me authentication work. I'm pretty sure Harrison was secretly helping spread the word. Thanks, boss. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Jenny, a fresh gemology graduate who reminded me far too much of my younger self. Brilliant, but overlooked because she was quiet. She's now my head of authentication and is worth her weight in gold. The company expanded faster than I could have ever predicted. We moved to a proper office downtown. Goodbye, Kung Pao chicken odor. I'd built a team of specialists. We earned a reputation for finding misplaced treasures. You wouldn't believe how many historically significant pieces of jewelry are misidentified as costume jewelry, gathering dust in people's attics. However, success came with its own set of challenges. The bigger we became, the harder it was to keep it a secret from my family. They still genuinely believed I worked in some little antique shop. Rachel would make these cutting remarks at family dinners. "Sarah," she'd ask, a sneer barely hidden, "I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it." Me, having just authenticated a $1.2 million Faberge item that morning. "Sure, I'll take a look." Mom would continue to introduce me to everyone as my other daughter. "She works with old jewelry or something." Meanwhile, I was being quoted in Forbes, luckily under my company name, and we had just opened our 3rd office. What's strange about it? Keeping the secret became almost enjoyable, like this private, delicious joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my Target discount outfit, really Chanel, listening to Rachel ramble about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I'd just closed a deal for more than her annual income. I even started playing little games with myself, like wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings, just to see if anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $200 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe that cost more than her car. The real challenge, though, was managing the growth. By year 5, we had offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on airplanes than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. It turns out many wealthy individuals want their jewels verified without the entire world knowing. The money was enormous. We needed to hire a large team of financial advisors. Yet, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I bought a nice, but not flashy, house in a good neighborhood. I drove a high-end, but not ostentatious car. The only places I truly splurged were my home office and advanced authentication equipment, including the most effective security system money could buy, and a custom-built vault that would make Fort Knox envious. What's ironic? My family believed I was being frugal by aiding them. Mom would say things like, "It's so sweet of Sarah to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just validated a collection that earned me a commission greater than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you have, the harder it is to explain to people who have always perceived you as inferior. It's like trying to explain color to someone who has only ever seen black and white. They simply lack the context. But by this stage, my company was thriving. We had the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication industry cornered, and our reputation was solid gold, pun intended. But every Sunday, I'd still go to my parents' house for dinner, playing Sarah, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ludicrous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast, while Rachel monopolized the conversation with stories about her latest marketing triumph. Usually something like bringing her boss's coffee without spilling it. One Sunday is burned into my memory. I had just closed a huge transaction, authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been sitting in someone's safe deposit box for 40 years. The commission? 7 figures. I drove directly from that meeting to my parents' place, still buzzing from the successful authentication. "Sarah, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn," Mom said, concern etched on her face. "Oh, just trying to save money," I replied, wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater that I had purposefully chosen for its subtle appearance. Rachel immediately pounced. "Well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry. Your dad." Mom interjected. "Rachel, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you." I almost choked on my pot roast, trying desperately not to laugh. It was around this time that the anonymous transfers to my parents began. Aunt Kelly had quietly told me they were struggling to pay Rachel's educational loans and medical bills. Mom had casually mentioned they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So I initiated an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When asked, I said I was only contributing $1,000 by living on rice and beans. They assumed the rest came from Aunt Kelly or other family members. Rachel, of course, claimed responsibility for inspiring family members to help. The money helped, but it also had unexpected consequences. My parents began treating me with a strange mix of pity and patronizing pride, as if I were some kind of noble poverty case, sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Rachel's spending became more extravagant. She'd show up for dinner with new, expensive bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can spot a genuine Gucci at 20 paces. She started taking extravagant vacations, bragging on Instagram about her fortunate life. I'm pretty convinced she was using my support money for shopping sprees, but I remained silent. The irony was just exquisite. Then came the MBA drama. Rachel announced she wanted to go back to school for her MBA. Another private university, of course. Only the best for the golden child. Mom called me in tears, explaining how they simply couldn't afford it. Maybe Rachel could look at state schools. I suggested they have really good programs too. My mother, aghast. "Oh, honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But speaking of helping, may I increase my monthly contribution for a few years?" I asked. I upped it to $7,000 a month. My accounts barely felt it, but watching them praise Rachel for taking initiative with her education while assuming I was living on ramen to help out, yeah, that stung a little. The actual kicker? I was giving a guest seminar at the very same business school Rachel wanted to attend. My family had no idea. The dean himself had personally invited me to lecture on luxury goods, authentication, and business growth. I had to concoct some elaborate excuse as to why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My own achievements started to feel like a distinct, separate life, as if I were some kind of corporate superhero with a hidden identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication business. By night, or rather on Sunday evenings, I was just Sarah, the disappointed daughter who worked at an antique shop. The weight of the untruth was becoming unbearable. Rachel made snide remarks about my career countless times. Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle. Dad consistently suggested I get a real job. I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It began 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, weeping about her back pain. She'd been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the thought of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests overwhelmed her. Now, I'd love to tell you I offered to help purely out of goodwill, but honestly, I was tired of pretending her dried-out turkey was appetizing. "Why don't I handle the food this year?" I offered. "I can have it catered." "Oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer," she replied. Don't worry about the cost, I reassured her. I've been saving up. Mom, immediately suspicious. You're not taking out a loan, are you? I coordinated everything with a high-end catering firm I used for business events. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you wonder why you ever bothered to cook yourself. It cost more than my folks probably thought I earned in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning dawned, and I was feeling pretty good. I even had my laptop with me, because I needed to monitor a major online auction in Hong Kong. A magnificent Art Nouveau necklace was up for sale, and I had a client interested in authentication if they won the bid. The lunch arrived on schedule, everything perfectly prepared. Rachel, of course, couldn't resist. Store-bought stuffing, really, Sarah? Mom's is so much better. This from the girl who once set off the smoke alarm trying to make toast. Mom was apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were all secretly enjoying the meal. Rachel, surprisingly, shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I excused myself from supper and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was getting intense, and I needed to be ready if my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Rachel's room had undergone 3 renovations. That's when everything went horribly, spectacularly wrong. I had left my authentication program running, with multiple tabs open displaying various accounts and current agreements. Rachel came in without knocking. Some things never change, to borrow my phone charger. She saw my laptop screen. And in that moment, I swear, she saw her chance to finally expose how pathetic her older sister was. Rachel, a smirk twisting her face, grabbed my laptop. Let's show everyone what Sarah's really been up to on Thanksgiving. Before I could react, she marched into the dining room. Picture this. 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, all stuffed with gourmet turkey and half-drunk on pricey wine, which they probably thought was Trader Joe's. Rachel, with a triumphant flourish, flipped the laptop around, intending, I assume, to humiliate me with whatever minor antique transactions she imagined I was working on. The room went utterly silent. You could hear the fancy clock I got Mom for Christmas, the one she believed was a reproduction, ticking softly. On my screen, bold and undeniable, were the numbers. Current account balance, $12.40 million, pending authentication contract, $485,000, recent transaction, $1.20 million, company's quarterly profit report, $4.20 million. Rachel's face cycled through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between pure astonishment and profound nausea. She actually swayed slightly on her feet. This cannot be right, she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Rachel, honey, what is it? Mom asked, confused. Rachel's voice cracked. She's rich? Sarah's rich. If it was possible, the hush deepened even further. Then Mom started giggling. Really, truly laughing. Don't be silly, she choked out. Sarah works at that little antique shop. I rose slowly, carefully straightening my basic cashmere sweater. Yes, actually, Mom, I said, my voice steady. I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. For years. That antique shop you never asked about? It authenticates pieces worth millions. It has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on his liquor. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. Uncle Bob started coughing terribly. Then Mom's giggling twisted into something else entirely. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up, so quickly her chair crashed backward. You have millions, she shrieked, and you let us struggle. Struggle. I shot back, a lifetime of suppressed anger finally bubbling to the surface. I send you $7,000 every single month. While sitting on millions, she screamed, completely ignoring my point. Your sister has student loans. There it was. Instead of congratulations, instead of wow, we're so proud, it was just outrage. Outraged that I hadn't given them more money, Rachel immediately began her phony crying performance. Surprisingly, it quickly stopped when she saw it wasn't working. Dad joined in. How could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you. That was when I lost it. Years of being disregarded. Years of dismissal. Years of being seen as nothing but a family disappointment. Everything poured forth. Raised me. I yelled, my voice shaking with fury. You shipped me off to Grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every single milestone because Rachel might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college, but took out loans for her private school. And now you're mad that I built something for myself. The next 5 minutes were pure, unadulterated chaos. Mom screamed about family obligations. Dad yelled about ungrateful children. Rachel alternated between sobbing and demanding to know just how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering team tried to serve dessert, looking exceedingly uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, picked up my Hermes bag, which Mom had previously complimented as a nice replica, and walked out. Behind me, I could already hear Mom discussing how to spend my money. Something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my sensible car, a limited edition BMW. Actually, my phone began filling up with texts. The family group chat exploded. Rachel immediately started posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a cyclone hit in slow motion, except the cyclone was my family and the debris was my sanity. Let's start with the texts. Within an hour of leaving dinner, my phone had 47 missed calls and over 200 messages. Mom's messages alone showed an intriguing progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering this? Is your mother? Rachel, on the other hand, went full social media warrior. She posted an enormous, rambling rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comment section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my moral character. But this is the part that truly got me. Rachel actually posted, all those years of me trying to help Sarah's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and she was secretly wealthy. The betrayal stung so much I almost threw my phone across the room. The only career advice she ever gave me was suggesting I try selling jewelry on Etsy. Then came the flying monkeys. If you're unfamiliar, that's when toxic family members send others to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, whom I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to inform me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still thinks I'm 12, emailed me a lengthy lecture on the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how she got my number, I'll never know, felt compelled to express her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun began when they showed up at my workplace. I walked in on Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Rachel sitting in our reception area. They'd told Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment for authentication services. Rachel clutched her Michael Kors bag as if it was genuinely worth something. The conversation went about as well as one would expect. We've discussed it as a family, my mother began, all prim and proper. A family discussion without the family member you're discussing. I interrupted, barely keeping my voice even. Mom ignored me. And we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Rachel chimed in. I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly. Dad added, and your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. Did you miss the part? I asked, my voice dangerously low, where I've been sending you $7,000 every single month. Rachel sneered. That's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. I owe you. I scoffed. I owe you for what exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Don't be so dramatic, Sarah, Mom interjected. We gave you everything. No, I retorted, a steel entering my voice. I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done. Right there in my own office lobby, I pulled out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. Rachel started her fake crying performance, but quickly stopped when she saw it wasn't working. Then things turned ugly. They refused to leave. I had to call security. Seeing my 60-year-old mother being dragged out, yelling about ungrateful children, was bizarre. Jenny asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no. However, I did have their names placed on the building's do not admit list. The harassment lasted for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses. They even tried to contact me through my company's customer service. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her final card. She called Grandma Marie. But here's the thing about Grandma Marie. She is wiser than all of them combined. Her response? Good for Sarah. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak with her for 2 months after that. It's been 6 months since that Thanksgiving. I've relocated to a new home with even better security. I've changed all my numbers. And the company? We're doing better than ever. It turns out my family drama actually attracted several high-profile clients who respected my discretion and handling of the situation. Rachel continues to post passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. From what I hear, she's starting her own jewelry authentication firm. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer sent them an official letter outlining how harassment charges would affect their lives. They're now telling everyone they never wanted my money anyway and are praying for my salvation. But here's the best part. For the first time in my life, I feel truly liberated. No more Sunday dinners full of sly insults. No more downplaying my accomplishments to spare their fragile feelings. No more financing the Rachel show. My therapist thinks I'm finally establishing healthy boundaries. I say, I'm finally living authentically. So that's my story. What a ride, right? I gave it to them, claiming I deserved it more. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced something like this? What would you have done in my place? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know. Oh, and one last thing, Rachel. I know you're probably reading this. That Cartier bracelet you're wearing in your most recent Instagram post? Definitely a fake. Just saying.